This is the PR Podcast, a show about how public relations helps you tell your story to the world. We talk with great PR practitioners who have the skills, creativity, and just plain savvy to get their clients noticed. Now here's your host, Jody Fisher.
Hey everyone, and welcome to the PR Podcast. I'm Jody Fisher. Thanks for joining us. Well, before we get into today's show, we need to stop for a moment and pay tribute to a special person, Steve Huweli, the founder and the CEO of Worthampton PR, who passed away this week. Steve was a personal friend of mine, as well as a guest on the show. He was our first guest back when we were just getting started. Steve was a smart, a kind, a humble man, always ready to lift others up. If you met him, you loved him. There's no two ways about it. And his professional journey is one that we can all learn from, a real bootstraps kind of a tale. I don't want to tell any of it. Take a listen to episode 2 of the PR Podcast. And this is not a shameless plug because I'm just trying to point you in the right direction to listen to Steve and his wisdom. It's episode 2 of the show. Get to know, it sounds horrible, right? It's the technical quality of the show is really bad, but all the way back then. But get to know my friend Steve if you don't know him already. He was a wonderful man. He is someone that I'm going to miss for the rest of my life. So Steve, thank you for all you did for me, all you did for us, for all you did for our profession, for the PR industry. You are a model to be emulated, and we hope we can live up to you. He would also be really pissed if I didn't get on with business and put some kind of a smile in this. So with that, we have a great guest today. Let's get right into it. Ross Wallenstein is a 20-year veteran of New York politics and public relations agency. He founded Wall-to-Wall Communications, I love that name, to create and execute specifically tailored plans designed to work across industries, regions, and market sectors. And he focuses on earned media, thought leadership, crisis communications, public affairs, and more. He's been recognized by city and state newspaper as one of the Long Island Power 100. I have never been on that list. And a rising star in New York City politics, but that's just because I'm not as good as he is. Ross, welcome to the PR Podcast.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's great to be here. I am an avid PR podcast listener, so it's really great to join you here today. It's something that I've listened to since the start of the podcast, and we'll get into it. But especially as I was beginning my own journey into entrepreneurship and beginning my own PR consulting business, I had some time to kill and would listen to you on bike rides and while doing the dishes, just to kind of get ideas and connect with people. And I have used it honestly to connect with previous guests and have made some business relationships and have used them to everyone's advantage. I actually just referred business recently to a former guest of yours who I connected with just from listening to her on the show.
That is so nice. You hit me right in the feels there, Ross. It's really great to hear. I really appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad it's having that kind of an impact, because that's the whole reason that I started this and interviewing, my friends and my soon to be friends and people I didn't know. And now I know folks like you have been introduced to me. I think our network is the thing that we thrive on. As PR people, it's the who you know is so important in what we do. And not just placing stories like, oh, I know this reporter. That's, yeah, sure. But it's our colleagues. It's the people we know. It's the people we interact with. And it's the people we can help out along the way. And, you bring that up, having helped out someone you didn't know and now I'm thinking back to Steve Huweli as a person who I didn't know, who referred me business, and I would refer him business. And we always help each other out. And that's what this whole show is all about. So thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah. And Jody, I saw about, I didn't know Steve. I saw something on Twitter earlier this week. Maybe it was through you. I don't remember if it was maybe PR Week or somebody did something on it. But I'm sorry for your loss. I didn't know him, but he sounds like a great guy. I'm gonna go back and listen to episode 2. I probably listened to it when it aired, but I'll go and re-listen again just to make sure I get the depth of it. But it's really something I think that to your earlier point, I think it's something that it's the one thing, the networking piece of it and the building relationships is the one piece that I have instilled. I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to have a little bit of gray hair and some stories to tell. And it's the one thing that I will tell to younger people, who are looking to break into, whether it's, business or politics or music or PR or pick a profession, right? But it's the one thing that I say is build your network, grow your network, send somebody a thank you note, send somebody a happy birthday email, connect with someone on LinkedIn and reach out to them occasionally. There was a young woman who I got connected with through my wife knows her mom actually, and she asked me about, she was interning in a political office this summer, and I said, build your network, go to events if you're allowed to go to events, reach out, walk across and go talk to a reporter. If you're at an event for the senator or for the Congress member and you're there, go meet the reporters, go meet the political players, go meet the people who are invited guests. Just walk. I mean, you're 22, go and meet everybody you can, so that 20 years from now, you can go back and say, hey, remember when I met you at this thing? Can you help me out?
100%. Great advice. So let's get into what you're all about. You're the classic New York City PR guy, at least in my frame of mind. Because you touch a little bit of everything, right? And that's my history as well. There's business, there's real estate, there's politics, there's nonprofits, and in New York City, at least, I've never worked in another city, lived and worked in another city, but in New York, it's like all intertwined. It's all together. It all touches each other. Tell us about your business, Wall to Wall Communications, and what it's like to work in that New York City environment.
So I want to take a step back for 2 seconds and just say that I do touch a little bit of everything in the PR world, and I've worked across a variety of sectors, like you said, real estate and nonprofit and Fortune 100 companies and everything in between, public-private partnerships. And nonprofits. It's also, I feel like it's the arc of the career is when I was very, very young and wanted to be a journalist. It's something, journalism, and this better than anybody else, right? But journalism is something where you can do a little bit of everything. Politics is sort of the same, where unless you have a niche specialty in policy, one day you're working on Homeland Security, and the next day it's education, and the next day it's education and transportation and whatever the principle or the policy of the moment is. So I feel like working across a variety of industries and a variety of sectors, it's the same idea, where there was never one thing that I really truly loved except for writing and communicating and telling a story. So now, over the last 10 years in PR and the 10 or 12 years before that in politics and on campaigns, it's the same the same theme throughout is I just like doing a bunch of different stuff. I don't like being bored, and I don't like getting pigeonholed doing one type of communication over another.
Is that what guided you when you were moving to set up your own agency and sort of figure out what path you were going to walk or what identity you were going to have?
Yeah, so I think when I was going off on my own, there was, people asked me, well, what's your specialty going to be? And I said, there are pieces of the business that I really like and pieces that I don't. And there wasn't one thing that I did over another. I think if I had to pick one, it was public affairs, which is still broad enough that you can say, well, I do public affairs. I could sell you a cheeseburger, and I did work with McDonald's and McDonald's franchisees for a long time, but selling a cheeseburger is not my specialty. It was making sure the brand reputation and the reputation of the franchisees and their ability to connect across a spectrum of stakeholders and influencers and reporters and elected officials, so that their reputation is well coordinated and well protected. That really falls under the umbrella of public affairs. So that's why that's the one theme that runs throughout. The crisis piece I like a lot, but I don't know a lot of people who are true. I only do crisis communications where they come in and come out, like Ray Donovan, where they're like a fixer, right? But it's I like that piece of it, and we can get into that, I think. But I think the public affairs piece is it lends itself to me doing a bunch of different stuff all at one time under the umbrella of something like a public affairs component.
Yeah, I agree with you on the public affairs piece. I'm a traditional earned media guy, and I'm a former reporter. So being in the trenches with the reporters every day and the editors every day and pitching them stories, getting the placements, all that kind of thing, that's sort of like the majority of what I do. But I've always been drawn to the public affairs element of that, and I always try to make sure that I'm involved with it. I've got a hand in it, because it really allows you to help the client make good decisions. It helps the client be the best version of themselves. I don't want to sound Pollyanna at all, but be the best version of themselves that they can be, and frankly that they're supposed to be, because the good press follows good action, right? And you know this, that if you're walking the right walk, people are going to start to take notice of you. They're going to start to want to cover you. And you will be doing things naturally. You'll be doing things that deserve coverage. And so I think the public affairs piece is really great. Now, your background in government there, let's talk a little bit about sort of how you transition from government into PR and into running your own agency.
So, fresh out of college, I had interned on Capitol Hill. I went to University of Maryland, where I wrote for the Diamondback, the student newspaper at Maryland. Diamondback, I think, is still one of the few college dailies in the country, where I had to write 3, 4, 5 stories a week, whatever it was. And then senior year, I interned on the Hill for Ben Cardin, who was then a member of the House and has now been in the Senate for a long time, and got my taste of what it's like to work in a fast-paced political environment where I was doing research on some issues and helping to write letters and whatever I was doing, and then kind of moved over onto the campaign side for a little while. In 2001, I met my then girlfriend, now wife of almost 17 years, but came back to New York, where I grew up, as did you, and came back to New York, worked on the mayor's race in 2001, worked on an assembly race in 2002. In 2003, I was fortunate to begin working with Congressman Gary Ackerman on Long Island, who used to serve Queens and Nassau County. Worked with him for a long time, and then moved over in 2007 when Eliot Spitzer became governor. I went to go work for Eliot on the Intergovernmental Affairs, Community Affairs division of his office, and obviously, like everyone else, had a lot of hopes for Governor Spitzer at the time. Thought he would go on and run for president one day, be vice president, attorney general, whatever it was, and obviously that didn't happen. One of the few things that I did well, I guess, in my year with Eliot was I became very friendly with Lieutenant Governor David Patterson, who asked me to stick around, and served out the remainder of his term with Governor Patterson, and got to work across, like I mentioned before, in the governor's office. Obviously, one day it's Homeland Security, the next day it's an education policy or a financial catastrophe or an airplane crash in Buffalo or something that happens that you have to focus on at that moment. So it gave me a taste for what it's like to both work in a fast-paced environment and also focus on the issue of the day and handle it and do it well. And then I really wanted to move over more towards the communications aspect of public affairs and politics. It's something that I hadn't had a chance to do a lot over my time in government and on campaigns. I'd done it a little bit here and there, but never as a full-time 24-hour-a-day thing. So I kind of took a step back, and it's something that I have told people before. And again, it's something that I would advise some of your younger listeners, I think, to be able to do that if it's possible, both financially and just logistically feasible for you to take a step back and say, hey, I want to go in this direction. What do I need to get there? So I took a step back, and I was a press secretary for an assembly member in Manhattan for a year, where I was just pitching stories every single day and trying to get the assembly member into the news and doing the full-time job of being a press secretary day in and day out. And then I did that, and I parlayed that into a brief stint at a corporation doing communications, and then took that and spent about 8 or 9 years on the agency side, And now I'm running my own shop.
So that's a terrific career arc. Let's talk about the moment that you knew you wanted to transition from being an employee to doing your own thing. What was in your head? And then what were the things or the steps that you went through to get your legs under you to start your own agency?
So I think it's important as storytellers, Jody, that we set the scene a little bit and realize that this was the winter of 2021, where everyone had been working from home for, close to a year. I had been on the agency side, and the spring of 21 actually was running communications for a New York City controller candidate. But somewhere in between there, I was trying to figure out the next step. And I said, you know what? I've done this long enough. I think I know what I'm doing. Most importantly, perhaps, I had a network from which I could draw and call and say, hey, I'm starting my own thing. Can you throw me some work? And we can talk about that in a second. But, this seems to be a running theme, right? But I think having that network and knowing that I had, a few dozen people really that I could talk to and say, hey, is there something you can throw me? Do you have some work on the side? Do you have something that you can give to me? If I didn't have that, I don't think I would have had the courage to do that and go off on my own. But I said, I had been working out of my house for 8 or 9 months. I didn't really want to commute anymore. I didn't really want to deal with, I was taking the train an hour and a half each way every day, 5 days a week for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, whatever it was. And it's exhausting, and it's not, there's no reason for it. And even if I went back to a company where they said, okay, you can work 2 days a week from home, I don't know if that's enough. I have 3 kids. I coached my son's little league team last spring. I was able to do that. While I was running my own business. If I had to take a call off on the side, I could do it. The games are, 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. There's no way I could have done that if I was still commuting into Manhattan every day from out on Long Island. And I just thought, look, I know what I'm doing. I know the strategy and the tactics involved in serving clients. And I've done it for so long that I didn't need that help. And I don't really mind doing everything all on my own, at least for a little while, until I'm able to build the business and hire some people under me if I needed it to help serve clients. But it's really something that I said, I know how to do this. I know how to get clients. So why not just try and go off on my own and see what happens? And you also can try something. And I gave myself a year, and thankfully it's a year and a month later, and I'm still going.
Very good. Congratulations. That's awesome. And I was identifying with so much that you were talking about there, from the commute, which I did. And I think I figured out that after I stopped commuting into Manhattan, I had spent literally more than 3 years on a train at one point, which is just mind boggling. But I'm identifying with the Little League coaching and the whole thing. I'm all in. We're like mirror images of each other in that regard. So there were some key things that I heard in there about sort of getting started. One was just the, can I do this piece, right? And having some work to sort of jumpstart what's going on and to get a little money in. Are there other things that maybe, as you reflect back over the past year and in those first couple of months, that were really important, things that you did that were really important that you look back and go, yeah, I'm glad I did that?
So yes, and I actually gave this advice to a friend and a former colleague recently who has moved on to other things, and said to me, he was thinking about going off on his own, and he didn't know what to do, and he didn't want to leave his company now. So I said, look, do all the back end work now, set up the paperwork, because that takes a little bit of time. The worst that'll happen is you never push the button. But at least if you quit, in 3 months, the next day you have the infrastructure that you need to go off and start to get business, right? So I came up with the name, which I think was just paramount to the beginning thing of starting a business. And
you nailed the name. The name's great. I love it.
I appreciate that, and I've heard that from a few people that they like it. And look, it's it's Fisher PR you could do, right? Wallenstein
Yeah,
PR doesn't have the same
I
ring.
know I can't.
Yeah, but you could. Or you could think of some clever derivation of it, right? But it's I didn't want to use my name. I didn't want to use my initials. So I said, what can I do that's sort of close, but it's not mynamepr.com, right? So I came up with the name. I didn't want something too cute, or I didn't want to use my name completely. And I needed something also that, look, if I went the distance, right, 10, 15, 20 years from now, if I managed to build this up into something that was bigger than just me, would somebody want to work at my initials PR? Probably not, but they're happy to work at a company that sounds like it makes sense. So I checked the domain registrations to make sure that was available. I filed the paperwork with the state of New York and the IRS and checking all the boxes that you need to do to create an LLC. I spent a lot of time late last spring and early last summer creating the website. I did it through Squarespace. I did it with the help of a friend of mine, by the way. If people have the ability to have someone who can help you with some of the technical aspects of it, I highly recommend it. And I'll give my friend Scott Shaw, who I went to college with, a plug, who has a great marketing company down in Maryland. But Scott really helped me with getting some of the stock photos, and he had access to iStock and some of the things that people have to pay for along the way. And I appreciate that he was able to do that. But there are cheaper ways and free ways to build these sites as well. And obviously, look, you have to do some of the lead up, writing your bio, writing your about page, writing, the sectors of the market that you want to focus on. All that stuff has to go into a website, obviously. So I spent a lot of time last spring and last summer developing all that, and obviously not publishing it until I was ready to go. Once the website was ready, then I was able to hit go. I also spent a lot of time asking people, like I said, drawing on my network of both former employers, former clients, and saying, hey, would you do a testimonial for me on my site? And a lot of times they were more than happy to do it, and even wrote them themselves. I'll tell you, the funny thing is I still am in touch with Governor Patterson, and actually called him last year when I was starting and just wanted to talk it through with him. And I said to him, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you write a testimonial for my website for me? And he's like, absolutely. And obviously, for those who don't know, Governor Patterson is legally blind. So he said, why don't you write it and call me next week and read it to me, and I'll approve it, or if I have any edits. I said, I will do you one better. I wrote it already and I have it in front of me. Can I read it to you right now? So he signed off on that, and I appreciate
that. Is classic PR, man, right? You're prepared with the pitch before you ask. Nice.
Right? Because the worst thing that would happen is if he would have said no, then I scrap it or let him do it, right? But he was very nice and was willing to do that. And the same with Congressman Ackerman, who gave me a nice testimonial for my site, and some former clients, people who I'd worked with, who were very nice about doing that. But I had all that stuff lined up, right? I had the testimonials and the bio and the about us, and I was able to do all that leading into it. And then I spent a lot of time, like I said, I basically went through everyone I've ever met ever. I went through my LinkedIn contacts. I went through my cell phone and my Google contacts and said, who can I call who's in a position right now to either refer business to me. Thankfully, I'm at the point in my career where I know a lot of people who are decision makers and are higher up in an organization where they're able to say, oh, you know what, I really need help. We need 3 op-eds. Can you write those and I'll pay you X number of dollars? Where people were able to just throw me work right off the bat without going to someone else and getting approval. So that obviously, not everyone is in that position, but if you can go through a network and go through a list of people and say, hey, I'm doing this, can you help me? And well before you publicly launch the business, that's you're in a good spot. So even if it was subcontracting work, I went to people I know who are in the business, who are either at PR agencies or have their own, and said, hey, do you have more work than you can handle? Do you have stuff that you need help with? I'm more than happy to pitch in, even if it's anonymous. I just need the paycheck. I don't really need the recognition for anything. So I was able to do that, and it gave me a good jumping off point that when I was ready to launch everything publicly last summer, I had that network built in, and I already had those conversations, and everything was lined up as much as it could be.
Great advice all around. Is there anything that maybe you did that you thought was going to be really important, or maybe you didn't do it, but you thought it was going to be important and it turned out that it didn't matter?
So I think the one thing that I would say if I could do differently, and it's not a huge deal, but when I was building the site for the business, like I mentioned, my buddy Scott from college, he was helping me a lot, and I showed him the pages, and he said, "Oh yeah, this looks great." Once I launched the website in July, I had a few people email me and say, "Oh, you should have done this differently. You should really have more client testimonials. You should have more women on your page. You should have some case studies and work that you've done," or whatever it was. But people had some thoughts on the site along the way, and it's obviously, I was appreciative and happy to have it, and I made those adjustments over the first few months of doing the business. But it's maybe if I had showed it to some people before I hit go and hit publish, I would have gotten that advice off the bat and could have adjusted. But it worked out. But that's one thing that I would say.
Yeah, some focus groups, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we all have them, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be formal. It's your friends, it's your colleagues, it's your spouse, it's whoever you get. And when you're doing something like that, it can be invaluable because everybody sees something from their own perspective, for sure. So let's pivot a little bit into the work that you're doing now with some of your clients. And we don't need to drop names, but if we can talk, about maybe some of the work that you do, some of the things that you focus on.
Yep. So I have been very fortunate to work for a bunch of great organizations and people over the last year or so. I will highlight one or two, but they all kind of have the same theme, like I mentioned, Jody, right? Where it's public affairs ish, but it's not necessarily legislative or policy driven. But there's a component to the overarching theme of what I do, and there was a great nonprofit that I had worked with, and it's somebody who was doing their fundraising who came to me and said, "Hey, they have this big push." It's an organization that figured out that in Europe, in the cemeteries in Europe, American military cemeteries, there are a number of Jewish American service members killed in World War II who were buried mistakenly under crosses. And the organization took it upon themselves to basically go one by one and fix each of them individually. They work with the Pentagon and the American Battle Monuments Commission and the families of the soldiers to basically say, "Hey, my great uncle was Jewish. He was buried under a cross mistakenly. Can you please fix it?" And they've had some success. So they had a big push. I got referred to them through my network again, right? Where it's a guy who was doing their fundraising who came to me and said, "Hey, I asked them what their PR plan is and they need some help. Can you do it?" So we came up with a strategy where we got a bunch of, let's call them profile pieces, right? But I got a big one in the Sunday New York Times in May, which was great. So I should staple that to my forehead and walk around with it, I think. But I got them also, some smaller ones, and I think this falls under the veil of the public affairs piece, right? Where we crafted an op-ed from the daughter of one of the service members who's 80 years old, and placed it in her hometown paper where she grew up in Missouri. And it basically said, "Hey, my dad was killed when I was little. I didn't really know him. This organization is fixing it. I'm finally having the closure that I need." It was a really great piece, but it's really something that I got to talk about Memorial Day, and I worked with the editor there to time it so that it appeared right before the Memorial Day weekend. It was ready by the end of April, but he held it, which was fine. And was able to use it for the holiday, and they made a big push, and it was all over social media, at least in Missouri that weekend, and got some nice play out of it. But it really falls under the I wouldn't have thought of that if I haven't done all the things that I've done over the last 20 years, both in politics and in PR. So I was able to kind of draw on that. And then my useless bachelor's in American history that I was able to throw in a little sprinkles from that as well. But it's companies like that. And then I've worked, like you said, I worked on a big real estate campaign that was really driven around the legislative session in Albany, in New York, from January until June. So it was something that I was responding to media. I was trying to get some story placements around the issue, working with both political reporters and real estate reporters. But it's really one of those things that like we've said, it's a fast pace. It was, Politico called and said, "Hey, I need a comment on this. You have 25 minutes." And I was able to get them an answer from the organization, but with my name attached to it, where we were able to respond to whatever it was that the story of the day was.
Yeah, those are great stories. And again, I'm identifying, my own personal experience to a lot of what you're saying too, because I think we all sooner or later have all those experiences, and then we have them again and again and again and again. But it speaks to a couple of things, and maybe we've got a theme here of network, right? The network that you have, not just with your clients, but then with the people whom they know within their organization in order to resource what you need to get them the placement that you want or the result that they want. Maybe it's not a placement, maybe it's something else, but the result that they want, along the lines of the public affairs piece there. But being able to tap into the network that you have to allow you to communicate what you want, get the result that you want, and create the relationship that you want for the future, because you and I both know, right? And I see you're nodding your head. That's the biggest part, I think, of what we do, is you're creating those long-term relationships.
Yeah, no, and it's look, even the project that I worked on for real estate in the spring, it came to me through a contact, a friend of mine who I had made when I was working on the agency side, and he was at a government affairs agency. He has since gone off and started his own thing, and he called me right after New Year's and said, "Hey, I'm working on this project and I really need somebody to help on the comms side. I don't have anybody in my shop who can do this. Can you?" And it was somebody who I'd reached out to last summer and said, "Hey, can you throw me work?" And 6, 7, 8 months later, he was able to throw me some work, and it was really great, and I appreciated it, and we had fun working together. And hopefully he throws me some more. But it's really just drawing on that network and constantly going back to it, and checking in, and obviously, you can be a human, and if it's somebody's birthday, wish them a happy birthday. If you see that they got married or they had a baby, or just to check in. I mean, it's so funny, I think, and it's something that I've heard on your show and I've heard in real life, where especially some of the older people in PR have said, "Oh, nobody uses the phone anymore. You want to call, or you want to talk to a reporter, you want to pitch a reporter, pick up the phone and call a reporter and say, 'Hey, I have this story.'" Sometimes you're iffy on it, but sometimes, right? Actually, I'll give you a better piece of advice. I've emailed reporters and said, "Hey, do you have 5 minutes for me on the phone?" And if they're on deadline, they say no, piss off. And if they say, "Yeah, that's great, I'm at my desk, call me now," then you call them, and at least they're ready for it, right? And that they're not working on something where it's going to bother them if you call them at their desk or you call their cell phone. But if you text them or email them and say, "Hey, do you have 2 minutes for a quick call?" They're usually more than happy. And there are some reporters who are better on the phone than others, and there are some reporters who are more than happy to spend a half an hour, kibitzing about whatever on the phone. And then there are others who are like, "What do you got? How does this help me?" "No." "Okay, goodbye."
Yeah, 100%. I have a habit of everybody I call now. I say, "Hey, it's Jody.
Yep.
How you doing? Do I have 2 minutes? Did I catch you at a bad time? At 30 seconds for me?" Anything like that. Yeah, totally. Be respectful of that, because that does build the relationship. It builds a relationship of respect and trust, and they're more likely to next time pay attention to what you have coming to you, because they know that you will treat them with the respect that they need, and frankly that they're due.
And that's true. And it's also something you can do on the other end of that, where if you don't have a relationship with that person, like I've emailed people, whether it's through Twitter or just directly, where I've said, "Hey, can I send you a pitch note? I have this thing. I just want them to see it, right? Reporters, reporters get hundreds of emails a day, if not thousands of emails a day. If you email them and say, hey, can I send you a quick pitch note? They say, yeah, sure, I can take it. Or otherwise, send it tomorrow. I'm working on something. But if they have a prompt for it and they're able to say, yeah, I have time to review this now, I think that goes a long way for them actually looking at it.
Yeah, all good stuff. And it all comes back to doing the things you need to do to build the network, to build the relationships, to build that framework of trust that is going to carry you both with your client work and with your relationships with PR people, and just frankly, like the person that people think you are. And I think that's so important with what we do, because, every profession gets pigeonholed into whether it's the lawyer joke or the accountant joke or or the PR guy joke. We are truly a lot more than that. And we are human beings, and we are respectful. There are bad apples in every group. And there are bad apples in our profession too. But I think that the vast majority of us, very respectful of the job the reporters are doing, the job that our clients are doing, and we are that bridge. And we also need to be the people who are making sure that framework is respected, and that we are always, helping us, helping our clients, helping everybody be the best version of who they can be. Ross, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. And I feel like it's totally appropriate for where we are this week. So thank you so much for coming on the show this week. We're going to transition now into our rapid fire question portion of the podcast. You're a listener, so I know you know what's coming. With your indulgence, we're just going to jump right in. Here we go, rapid fire. And you're from New York, so these should be really great New York answers. All right, rapid fire question number one. What's your favorite news source?
So I'll say Twitter, but with a caveat that all the people who give social media a bad name and say, oh, you get your news from Facebook and from the internet and from social media. I read Twitter, but obviously I don't read it for long form information pieces. I read it for obviously quick news and see what's happening at the moment. And then, I obviously follow reporters and editors and publications and then still read those for more in-depth reporting. But I'm going to say Twitter.
Twitter is definitely the theme here on this show. Rapid fire question number two. What's your favorite social media platform?
So I'll say Twitter again, but for the reasons that I just mentioned. And then for professional development, I'm going to say LinkedIn.
Good one. Definitely. Rapid fire question number three, coffee or alcohol?
So I like both. I'm going to say coffee, but only because if I told you that I got a headache from not drinking alcohol, you would think there's something very wrong with me. But I always love, a good Cabernet or an old fashioned at night after dealing with clients the whole day.
Sounds good. Rapid fire question number four. What's your favorite on the run food?
So I've worked from home for 2.5 years, and I'm not on the run a bunch. When I was commuting, I would carry a granola bar or two in my briefcase. If I'm on the run now, and I know that I haven't eaten, I'll go. Being a seventh generation New Yorker, I will say, of course, a bagel and cream cheese, and bring that in the car with me, so I get sesame seeds everywhere.
Nice. Rapid fire question number five. What do you want to be after you finish this career? You just started a new one, but what's on your mind?
So I think every PR person fashions themselves, and if they don't, they should, as some writer. I recently, I don't know if you saw David McCullough passed away, and I saw an interview with him from 60 Minutes where he showed his little shed where he wrote all of his books on a typewriter at a farm in Massachusetts. And I feel like, when I'm done with this business and I can, maybe one of my kids wants to take it over, but then I can go sit in the shed and write books on a typewriter until I can't do it anymore.
That doesn't sound so bad.
No, it doesn't. It sounds nice.
Half of us are
actually.
relegated to the shed anyway, right?
Exactly.
Well, thanks again, Ross. Really appreciate this conversation. Please let people know how they can find you online.
So the website is wall-to-wallcommunications.com. Email is ross@wall-to-wallcommunications.com. Twitter is Ross Wallenstein or wall-to-wall comms, COMMS. and LinkedIn is Ross Wallenstein.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much, Ross, for spending time with us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the show. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at the PR Podcast. Send us a question or a comment. Our intro is by Christopher Appold. You can find him and his fantastic photography on Instagram at Christopher_APPOLDT. Check him out there and hire him for all your photography needs. You can find me online at Jody Fisher on all the socials and on the web at jodyfisherpr.com. See you next time on the PR Podcast.